Hi there, this is a video about your thumb and how you use it in different ways as you become more advanced. This is the answer to a question from one of you. I think you all have heard that the general wisdom is to keep your thumb in the middle of your hand. A lot of people say underneath your second finger. I tend to say in the middle of your hand because I think it's maybe more valid for a lot of people. When you first begin, you want to set up your hand. You're trying to learn muscle memory so that you can always put your hand in first position and have it be in the right shape so that you'll be able to play in tune. So it's really, really important that you establish this shape and that you keep it all the time, which means putting your thumb either underneath your second finger. And when we say underneath your second finger, not in between first and second, but really smack underneath that second finger or in the middle of your hand. And then round fingers. And as I do this and I put my hand on the instrument, I'm sure my thumb is lined up. I don't need to look at it because my hand knows how to do this, but I'm also trying to keep my thumb light. This is really, really difficult for starting players. It's virtually impossible to keep your thumb light, but everyone will keep telling you to relax your thumb, and you'll try, and eventually you may be able to do it. If you've watched any of my other videos, you've seen me talk about using arm weight, but there's also a little bit of balancing that has to happen. You need to do this for a while. It's going to be more than just a week or two. It's probably months of consistent playing so that you can take your hand away, put it back on, and your hand knows what the spacing is for those notes. Then, as you start progressing, you start moving to different positions. Usually we start going to second, third, maybe fourth position. When you shift, your thumb goes with you. And you'll notice also, by the way I have my hand set up, my fingers are round. I advise when you're in the beginning stages that you put all the fingers down, not walking your hand up. But when your fourth finger's down, it means 1, 2, 3, 4 are down, because you're trying to train your hand to hold the fingers open and to know that spacing absolutely without having to think about it. So you've got to repeat it like 1,000 times. Okay, so my fingers are a little bit tilted. My fingertips are slightly pointing towards the bridge. And I maintain that shape as I go up the instrument. So I go from first position to second position. My thumb is in the same place. So you'll also notice that my thumb is not really far underneath the neck. I like to recommend that you put your thumb on, if your neck were square and you had corners, that you're putting your thumb on the corner that is farthest away from you, so the outer corner, not on the bottom of the neck, not underneath, because that's going to kind of makes your hands smaller when you go over to the low strings, and you want your hand to stay open and round like you're making a big C shape. When you go to fourth position, your thumb will be in a different place, because in fourth position, your first finger's on top of your thumb, so you can't maintain the same shape. Completely impossible. So as you go up to fourth position, and you'll notice when I start, I try really hard to remember to find my first note, because that's a variable. Sure, there's muscle memory and I know approximately where that is, but my chair might be a different height. I think my end pin's a little low today to show you these kinds of things. But I always check my first note. My thumb's in the middle of my hand. I shift to fourth position and I change. So now my thumb and my first finger are lined up. When I'm on the C string in fourth position, I really keep my thumb way out on the outside corner of the neck. Otherwise I can't reach it. If I try to keep it underneath, I just get stuck here. So then the question is, when do you start moving your thumb? Because guess what? Your thumb does start moving. And my answer for that is you need to be able to play really accurately in tune in first position. The first thing that you'll do, actually, in addition to the shifting, is you'll do extensions, maybe even before you do shifting. So when you do an extension, your thumb is also staying between your second and third finger, or underneath your second finger, and it moves this way. So I have a thing I call starfishing, and starfishing is when you go into the extension and you kind of go like that with your hand. I hold on to my first finger and I open my whole hand forward. And as I do that, my thumb lets go and then I place it down. And to some extent, you can do this if you just take your thumb off totally. You find your extension and you put your thumb down somewhere down there. It'll probably go pretty much in between your second and third finger. So that's a situation where my thumb is, yes, moving, but it's staying between my second and third finger. And the idea for this is, again, to try to be loose. The more you play, the stronger your hand will get, and the more control you'll get, and the looser you'll be able to get with your thumb. But if you're grabbing on really tight, you're going to have a lot of trouble shifting, and you're going to have a lot of trouble opening up for the extensions. So going in and out of extensions may be the first place that you really need to feel like your thumb is loose and relaxed, because you want your thumb to be moving this way with your hand so that it's a unit and not moving late or staying behind, that it's moving this way. Okay, so then once you get to a point where you can really play well in tune in first position, your extensions are nice, the next thing you're going to do is add vibrato. You cannot vibrate and keep your thumb in one place. It is physically impossible, except with your second finger, because your thumb is probably underneath your second finger. So great, you can play with your second finger. But the idea of vibrato is like a teeter-totter. We're going to be using your arm for the vibrato, but the action at your hand is that you're doing a teeter-totter shape. So you're doing it on top of your thumb, which means when you're doing your first finger, you need it to teeter-totter on top of your thumb. Third finger, you need your thumb underneath it for this action. You can't hold all your fingers down in vibrato. There's an example of me trying to do that, nor can I vibrato with my thumb glued onto the instrument. So when you hit this point, this is the first moment where you really need to develop a looser thumb. You need to relax the thumb, and you need to practice doing what I call pivoting. So pivoting for me means taking one finger, putting your thumb underneath it, changing to your second finger, moving your thumb forward, changing to your third finger, moving your thumb forward. And you'll notice now I don't have all my fingers down, moving to the fourth finger. So I'm like walking my fingers back and forth this way. This is the next stage in hand development. So it's not just about your thumb, it's about your fingers as well, because the way you're going to use them for vibrato is this single finger idea. One at a time, walking forward, I move my thumb, and your thumb doesn't have to go exactly under your finger. You don't have to sit and line it up. Have it be somewhere that it feels good to you. But even if you can't do vibrato yet, this exercise of pivoting your hand back and forth is really valuable in terms of development. And I think once you get to a point where you're doing good vibrato, your thumb is moving, you're able to do vibrato in extensions, at that point it starts to all kind of make sense to your hand. Your hand understands what it's doing in some organized fashion. It takes a really long time to get there. It takes a long, long time to get your thumb to behave. And I think that's really kind of the last thing that sort of congeals technically. So that means after 10 years, 15 years of playing, you finally start to be able to get that kind of control of the thumb. Because I really don't think, if you think of a kid that starts when they're young, they don't usually really get that level of control until they're late teens into college. So that's just kind of a guideline. If you've been playing for 5 years and you're frustrated with your thumb, it's probably not in control yet. The last thing that kind of comes in is that your thumb moves when you vibrate. And I don't know if you can see how well you can see that on this video, but when I vibrate, my thumb is doing a small version of this. It is actually moving back and forth because I'm vibrating using my arm. I'm vibrating with my method where I do sliding. And because of that motion, because I'm not doing any twisting here, but rather I'm doing an up and down slide, my thumb is literally sliding up and down the neck. I can feel it. My thumb maintains contact with the neck the whole time I vibrate, but it very, very lightly moves back and forth in a linear fashion. And I remember that happening to me at a point where I had played the cello for about 13, 14 years. So like I said, it takes a really long time till your hand gets organized enough to have that level of control. try out some of these things. You may need to play for a longer period than you think before your thumb is ready to start relaxing and moving around where you want it to. Good luck.